Welcome to Hormones Happen, the no-fluff podcast for men and women who are tired of feeling stuck in someone else's body. If you've been dragging through your day, struggling with stubborn weight, low sex drive, brain fog, or just feeling off, you're not crazy, and you're definitely not alone. I'm a nurse practitioner who's helped countless people transform their lives through hormone replacement therapy, and I've been through the journey myself. Here, we cut through the confusion, ditch the shame, and talk real solutions. Because it's time to stop just surviving and start thriving. This is your moment to be the hero of your own story. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Hormones Happen. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to give you a little scenario here, right? It starts small. Your morning workouts leave you a little sore than usual. The stairs start to feel a little steeper, and nagging joint pain becomes a daily companion. Does this sound familiar, guys? By your 40s or 50s, even if you've stayed active, these signs become harder to ignore. The truth is, aging affects not just your energy, but your hormones, your muscles, your joints, everything. And for many men and women, navigating the intricacies of low testosterone, sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle loss, and chronic joint pain becomes standard. And while yes, hormone replacement therapy, testosterone replacement therapy may help, it may not always be enough. And that's where we discuss Nandrolone decanoate, or otherwise known in the bodybuilding circuits as DECA. Now this often misunderstood and very underutilized compound is very unique in its ability to build lean muscle mass, ease joint pain, and also support bone health without some of the androgenic side effects that we see with other androgens, anabolic androgens like testosterone. But how is that? Well, let's talk about it. Listen up, guys. Nandrolone is an anabolic steroid. I know. Don't let that word scare you. Okay, we're not talking about gym bros in locker rooms pulling these sketchy vials out of their duffel bags. Okay, despite its common place in bodybuilding, it's very safe when taken under medical supervision, preferably someone who's well versed in anabolics and hormone replacement therapy. But if your goals include building and maintaining lean muscle mass, reducing joint pain and possibly stiffness, improving your mobility and recovery from workouts, and just generally supporting healthy aging, Nandrolone is a fantastic adjunct or supporting agent along with TRT. And while you may be saying, well, all of these things sound exactly like what my TRT does, there are some key differences. Let's start off with anabolic to androgenic ratio, or AA ratio. What the hell is this? Well, it's a measure that's used to describe the balance between muscle building, aka anabolic effects, and masculinizing, aka androgenic effects of anabolic steroids. Some examples of anabolic effects would be growth of muscle, bone, red blood cells, and androgenic effects are things like male characteristics such as the development of facial and body hair, voice deepening, prostate developing. So when you're taking a steroid, we always look at the anabolic and androgenic components. So testosterone, for example, has a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning that you get just as much anabolic effects or the muscle building effects as you do the androgenic effects, the masculinizing effects. And that's why with women specifically, we have to be very cautious to limit the androgenic effects by titrating and adjusting our doses appropriately. And while testosterone has a 1-to-1 AA ratio, Nandrolone is roughly 10-to-1 anabolic to androgenic ratio, meaning that it's 10 times more effective at the anabolic properties, the muscle building, than the masculinizing effects, the androgenic effects, such as the male secondary sex characteristics. And that's huge. That makes a huge difference. Why is that? Well, essentially, you get all the lean muscle mass benefits without the issues with DHT conversions, such as hair loss, acne, some will say potential mood swings, although that's debatable. And for women, it's a game changer in the fact that it helps with, like I said, the muscle building, the bone protection, without getting those masculinizing effects.
Loving this content? Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok for even more insights. And hey, while you're there, don't forget to like, comment, and share. It really helps us grow. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
How does Nandrolone improve muscle building? Well, it enhances what's called nitrogen retention, which is critical for a process called protein synthesis. It's the foundation of muscle growth and recovery. It also activates what are called satellite cells in muscle fibers to help speed up and repair muscle tissue after workouts. So oftentimes, guys who are hitting the gym constantly, they're doing all the right things, but they're not seeing any gains, may be lacking one of these components. And while yes, testosterone does help with this, with Nandrolone's increased anabolic profile, it is going to just do it a little more effectively. Let's take a second to appreciate the effects of DHT, or dihydrotestosterone. This is a downstream hormone of testosterone. It's converted via 5-alpha reductase, either type 1 or type 2, and it does a lot of things in the human body. First of all, it's very androgenic, and it has a stronger binding affinity to androgen receptors. It gives us our male sexual characteristics, body hair, facial hair. It promotes acne, growth of our prostate. And so what's the difference between DHT and the conversion from testosterone and Nandrolone? Well, while Nandrolone is derived from testosterone, it's missing a 19-carbon atom. And so that does change how it gets converted via 5-alpha reductase. It doesn't convert into DHT or dihydrotestosterone, but it gets converted into dihydronandrolone, DHN, which is a much, much weaker androgen. That is why it causes less hair loss, less acne, less overall male sexual characteristics. I had a patient once who was on TRT with great effect, and as we increased his dosage to alleviate his symptoms, he kept having significant acne flare-ups. And we tried a variety of things, such as supplements like vitamin A, vitamin B6, zinc, and he tried topical solutions, antibiotic creams, benzoyl peroxide, differin gel, and none of it seemed to help. It was improving, but the dosage he was requiring for symptom alleviation was causing acne. He'd had a significant history of cystic acne as a child, as a teenager, should I say, and it was just flaring up constantly. Plus, he was in a very stressful job, which doesn't help as well. So what we ended up doing is decreasing his testosterone and adding on Nandrolone. Helped his symptoms, helped, with the muscle building, helped with the mood. And we were also able to come down on his testosterone, which alleviated his acne. So it's not one size fits all with hormone replacement therapy. We have to sometimes audible and change things. And for him, it was a very unique situation as to where he needed the addition of the Nandrolone to decrease his overall use of testosterone because his issue was the androgenic effects. Another difference between testosterone and Nandrolone is how it aromatizes or gets converted via an enzyme called aromatase. Now, traditionally, testosterone gets aromatized into estradiol, which is a form of estrogen. And many people have the misconception that Nandrolone doesn't aromatize at all. It does, but it doesn't aromatize into estradiol. it aromatizes into estrione, which is a weaker form of estrogen. It's one of 4 types of estrogen in the human body. And so we do see a widening of the testosterone to estradiol ratio because of this. In fact, I've had some individuals who had been on testosterone with an aromatase inhibitor for very long periods of time to try to widen that gap. Once again, I don't support that, but something we could talk about in another podcast. And eventually, because of the harsh effects of the aromatase inhibitor, they decided to introduce nandrolone into their cycle. And because it converted to estrione, it was widening that testosterone to estradiol ratio without them having to subject themselves to the harsh side effects of the aromatase inhibitor. Not that I recommend it for that specific purpose, but there are some patient populations who aromatase at higher rates, either because of genetic propensities, significant obesity, medication use or drug use such as marijuana and opioids. And for populations such as those, widening that testosterone to estradiol ratio is not necessarily a bad idea. And sometimes we can find ways around having to use those harsh aromatase inhibitors.
If you're serious about optimizing your health, don't stop here. Visit stillcity-trt.com for in-depth information on all things HRT and TRT. Now let's get back to the show.
Let's talk about the real secret sauce of nandrolone. Not the muscle building, not the bone protection, not the aromatizations, but the joint pain. This is the number one reason that I actually prescribe this medication, is for individuals who have chronic knee pain, hip pain, shoulder pain, elbow pain, whatever pain. We're all going to get pain at some point. But nandrolone has in studies shown to be very, very effective at decreasing these joint pains. But how does it do it? First of all, it stimulates collagen synthesis. Collagen-rich tissues like ligaments and tendons support our joints. Nandrolone increases collagen production, helping to reduce instability and chronic pain, especially for those with osteoarthritis or inflammation of the joints. Because remember, at the end of the day, you are only as strong as your connective tissue. It also enhances joint lubrication. It boosts what's called synovial fluid retention in your joints. This is the fluid within the joint that gives it its nourishment. It makes your joints feel less stiff and more mobile. Think of it like WD-40 for your knees. And lastly, it increases your bone density, which protects against fractures, especially when paired with testosterone replacement therapy. Like I said before, this is the number one reason that I prescribe nandrolone. I will have a man come to me who's on TRT, feeling great, living their best life, just this chronic, nagging pain, taking Tylenol and ibuprofen every day. Does this sound familiar? And we'll discuss some options, right? We have peptides like we've talked about, BPC-157, TB-500, sermorelin, but maybe he also has a goal of wanting to build some additional muscle mass. Well, I think a great option for this guy would be nandrolone in addition to his testosterone. And we'll talk in just a minute as to why you want to make sure you have testosterone in addition to nandrolone. But for this individual patient, nandrolone would be a great addition to help him achieve his muscle building goals while now alleviating his chronic joint pain. One additional benefit I did want to talk about was nandrolone has been shown to reduce what's called neuroinflammation and protect our brain tissue, which means that it could potentially lower cognitive decline as we get older. Now, granted, there's not a lot of research or studies on this. It is just worth mentioning that later down the pipeline, we may see this becoming a beneficial medication for just about everyone on TRT to help prevent these neurocognitive disorders caused by metabolic diseases and insulin resistance. Is nandrolone safe? Well, it's got a horrible misconception that it pre-exposes you to significant cardiac issues. Now, realize anytime a medication has any sort of study, they do this typically in animal studies. And they've done studies that show that in rats taking incredibly high dosages of nandrolone, it has shown some poor outcomes in cardiac recovery when they essentially induced heart attacks on these rats, or they had them on incredibly high doses and had them perform intense physical activity and saw some unreassuring signs on their cardiac profile. Now, one thing that's important to know is with animal studies, we have to take it as an animal study. And we have to realize, well, we're not rats. And so there's always going to be some degree of risk because we're never going to know everything about these medications. But there is more data to support the safety of nandrolone than there is to essentially dispel it. So this is something that you do need to talk to your medical professional about and see if this is something that you would benefit from, because everyone's different, and I'm not naive enough to say everyone should be on nandrolone. But I think that's something that we should talk about. Let's get real for a second. Yeah, aging happens, but feeling exhausted, struggling with sleep, losing your edge in the bedroom, and watching your confidence tank, that's not just getting older. That's a hormonal imbalance, and you don't have to live with it. They'll tell you hormones are dangerous, but hand you a prescription with a mile-long list of effects. Enough is enough, guys. At Steel City HRT and Weight Loss, we cut through the noise. We offer safe, bioidentical hormone therapy customized to you and backed by real lab monitoring and personalized care. Because your health isn't one size fits all. If you're done with the BS and ready to feel like yourself again, strong, focused, and confident, call or text us at 719-669-4223. Let's build a plan that actually works for you. Steel City HRT and Weight Loss. Be the hero of your own story. All right, guys, welcome back to the Q&A. If you have any questions you would like answered on the podcast, send them to hormoneshappen@steelcity-trt.com. Now let's get into it. Can you use nandrolone by itself? Well, yes, but you probably shouldn't. And the reason is one of the more prevalent symptoms is erectile dysfunction symptoms when used either at high doses or on its own. And there are a lot of thought processes as to why this may occur, such as the lack of DHT production, decreased aromatization to estrogen, aka estrione. But there's also some thoughts that it may influence some circulatory causes in our blood vessels. It's hard to say exactly why, but I've only seen this a handful of times. I always recommend a testosterone to nandrolone ratio of 2-1, twice as much testosterone as your nandrolone to prevent this. I see with the 2-1 ratio, I never see this as an issue. I do have some guys who absolutely adamantly prefer to be on just nandrolone, and they have not had ED symptoms. But I have seen men who do have symptoms with nandrolone, the erectile dysfunction symptoms, and we will need to either decrease the nandrolone or increase the testosterone. So ultimately, yes, you can be on just nandrolone, but I don't advise it. Can women use nandrolone? Absolutely. Now, realize it's going to be at a lesser dose than a man, just like with testosterone. And even though nandrolone doesn't cause the significant androgenic conversion that we would see with testosterone, it still converts to DHN, and we still can see some of those effects. So while some may say this would be a better option for women, and arguably so, testosterone is going to be more complete. So I also, for women, would not recommend this to be a monotherapy agent. I do recommend it in conjunction with testosterone for either muscle building properties, bone protection, or the most likely cause, joint pain. Is Nandrolone legal? Absolutely it is. Now, granted, there are a lot of illegal places you could get Nandrolone. It's completely legal in the United States. It is used off-label for HRT and TRT purposes. But as long as you're seeing a medical professional, preferably one who is knowledgeable in the realm of anabolics, it's completely legal, completely safe. Is Nandrolone and oxandrolone the same? And just for context, oxandrolone is colloquially known as Anavar, which used to be the brand name. It's been discontinued since. Now, although they both have a higher anabolic to androgenic ratio, they are not the same. Let's talk about some of the differences. So, Nandrolone is what we call a 19-nortestosterone derivative, whereas oxandrolone is a DHT-derived steroid. Nandrolone is given via injection, either sub-Q or IM, whereas oxandrolone is taken orally. We talked about earlier, Nandrolone has a roughly 10-to-1 AA ratio. Oxandrolone has a very impressive 13-to-1, possibly up to 20-to-1 AA ratio. The half-lives are also different. Nandrolone, when used with the decanoate ester, has a half-life of roughly 6 to 12 days, whereas oxandrolone, of course, when taken orally, is only 9 hours. Nandrolone, as we talked about, converts to estrione, so low aromatization, whereas oxandrolone has essentially none. And then DHT, we talked about this earlier. Nandrolone converts to DHN, whereas oxandrolone, being a DHT-derived steroid, does not actually get converted to anything. Like I mentioned earlier, Nandrolone is going to be great for muscle building, joint pain reduction and healing, and preserving strength, whereas oxandrolone is typically used for cutting phases, trying to maintain lean muscle mass. I see it predominantly used by women who compete in bodybuilding, figure, or their own personal goals. But because it is oral and it has a 17-alpha alkylation to it, it can cause some stress on the liver. And there are some studies that show that, lipid increase as well. And so, they both do some similar things, but I would say that Anavar is going to be something that's used more for, it's got to be a short-term thing because of the fact that it can cause some stress on the liver. Whereas Nandrolone is something that, although most say you should cycle it, a lot of people continue it for long-term and they do just fine. That's a wrap on today's episode of Hormones Happen. I hope you're walking away with some clarity and confidence. If this resonated with you, let's keep the conversation going. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, or over on the blog. And if you haven't yet subscribed yet, go ahead. It's the easiest way to keep growing and learning. As always, we believe in your power to heal, thrive, and lead. Be the hero of your own story.